Thank you so much, John, for joining us here at the Dwellynn Show. I'm super excited to have you on the show, particularly just because, we've met in person. I've known you for some time now.
Yep.
So I'm really excited to just, dive right into the show today.
Well, thanks for having me on. It's excited to be on the show and to talk to you a little bit more.
Awesome. So, John, I think you can do a way better job than I can. Can you just tell us a little bit more about yourself, kind of, what you've been doing, what you've been up to lately?
Yeah, sure. So, John Casmon, I am based in Chicago, Illinois. I am a Midwest kid, born and raised in Cleveland, Ohio, but I've lived around Detroit. I went to school in Dayton, Ohio. I've been in Chicago, been in back to Detroit, back in Chicago. So I've kind of lived all over the Midwest a little bit. So that's kind of my grounding as far as location wise. And I invest in multifamily apartments. Right now I'm working with other investors and really just, doing some syndications and things like that, but working with other people, pulling our resources together to go out there and acquire apartment buildings. We own some properties by ourselves and we were doing that for a while and just realized that one, we could find a better way of doing what we were trying to do. But then two, we knew a lot of other people who were interested in investing in real estate, but weren't taking the time or energy to learn about it the way we were. And they were a little bit more comfortable, working with us. So it's kind of a win-win situation.
I love it. I love it. So before we even jump into some of the real estate activities, why did you even get into real estate in the first place?
So, like most of your guests and your listeners, there was this little purple book that I came across back in, I don't know, it was like maybe my sophomore year in college. And, for me, just my background, we didn't really grow up. Like I was the first person in my family to go to college. So we didn't really grow up talking about money or wealth creation or stocks and bonds and real estate and things like that. So, but I was always interested and curious to how other people were making money, right? And how other people were creating these things where they had, abundant lifestyles and, we seemed to struggle a little bit. So that purple book really crystallized it for me. It helped open up the doors to a mindset that I wasn't really privy to prior to that. So I saw it, but it was the light switch that helped me turn the lights on and actually see the path that we needed to take. So from there, I think it was about learning more about the how, right? So that was here's the what. But now how do you do it? And real estate was something that I was aware of. I had no idea how to actually invest in real estate. I went home for a summer after my junior year. I went home with the full intention of investing in real estate. But again, I didn't know how to do it. So long story short, from that point on, started learning a little bit more. And then by the time I was able to save up enough money on my own to purchase real estate, we started to take that action and figure out how to start creating this passive income, but then also creating some wealth as well.
I mean, that's a really good piece that you mentioned. So you wanted to get in, you wanted to start investing, but you didn't know how, you didn't know how to get started, but then you didn't have enough money. So like if there's a Dwell listener listening to this and thinking, that's me. Like I want to learn more, but I don't know where to go or I don't have enough money. What'd you say to that person?
Well, I think you can move way quicker than I did, right? So, I waited probably 10 years. From my junior year in college, from the time when I was passionate and really wanted to do it. But we all have this doubt, right? The self-doubt or the limiting beliefs. And at that point, I didn't know how. And I was maybe a little too self-assured or confident or overly confident or to go out and ask somebody, right? So I didn't humble myself to start just finding folks who are doing it and asking people. And I think today, if I could go back and talk to, 23-year-old John, I would tell him, dude, get on Bigger Pockets, start networking your ass off, listen to podcasts and reach out to these people, right? I think that the action is the key. It's one thing to listen to it or read a book and get the information, but you've got to reach out and take some real action. So I think if you're listening to this podcast, you feel like you're passionate about getting started in real estate, you've heard enough tales and stories of people who have leveraged real estate to change their lives or to create wealth or to, give them the free time that they're looking for, take the action. That's the important piece of it. Reach out to the guests that you're hearing on the podcast. Reach out to my man Ola and, find out what he's doing. Find out if he can give you some tips. Find out if you can do coffee with him, breakfast, lunch, whatever. Figure out how you can help him in his business. But that's the key thing that I would tell a listener who's listening to this right now. If you don't have the money to do your own deal, figure out where else you can add value and add that value. But take those steps, add value, and from there, just being around it and being around people who are doing it, now you've got the answers to all your questions. Now you've more naturally built in these different mentors who can help take you under the wing. It wasn't until I started going to those RIA events, those real estate investing association meetings, where I really started to find these mentors who could answer these questions, which allowed me to be more humble, right? Because I just didn't want to go out of the blue and start harassing people. But I'm telling you, do it. Harass people. It's okay. Like, there's a line, but don't feel bad reaching out to someone saying, hey, heard you on this podcast, or hey, read your book, or hey, read this article you wrote, would love to pick your brain. Some people may give you the time of day, some people won't. But if you reach out to 10 people, my guess is 6 or 7 of them will take the moment to respond to you, set up a meeting, and talk to you a little bit. But the key for you is just to take that action.
That is so, so good. That is so, so good. Like, just, I love what you said about humbling ourselves and basically saying it's okay that I don't know everything about everything, right? I love that. So, you did all those steps, you knew, you learned a little bit more, you reached out to folks. What did you do next? Did you buy a deal? Did you wholesale? How did you really get your foot in the real estate door?
So I was fully focused on multifamily. So I started with the duplex, and I needed a place to live. I'm in Chicago. In the city of Chicago, there just aren't a lot of single family homes, and the ones that are here are very expensive. On the north side of town, the south side, in different buckets of the city, it's a little bit of a different story. But where we were living, a duplex actually made a lot of sense. So we house hacked, which is, I think a term a lot of people in bigger pockets use. But we house hacked. We bought a 2-unit building, lived in this top unit, renovated that unit before we moved in, and then the first unit was already rented out. But because of that, we were able to make some moderate changes to the property, increase the value, increase rents, and we actually refinanced and created a pretty substantial line of equity. So we got a line of equity credit for the property, and that really opened up the doors to what we could do next, because we were just saving our own money. We were saving, about 40% of our paycheck basically put into the real estate investing fund, and once we had a big enough pot, we actively go hard looking at properties. So we did that for the first couple of deals. When we created that the equity in the first property, that opened up the doors. We bought an 8-unit building at that point, and then realized that path was very slow. So at that point, we had the bright idea to start flipping houses. And I jokingly say that because I had no desire to flip houses. I only did it to earn more money to buy and invest in multifamily apartments. And we had a partnership. We could talk more about that, but we had some partnerships. And I think strategically it was a sound strategy. There were some flaws in my assumptions with the execution that made it not work as well. And it was a partnership side. It was identifying partners. And we learned a ton about how to properly screen partners. And we talk a lot about screening tenants, but screening partners isn't something we talk enough about. But we learned a lot from there, and moved on to some of the large multifamily buildings that we're investing in now.
Oh, wow. Like, that right there is a whole podcast. I definitely have to get you back, Jonah. So there's a lot in there. It's so bizarre. And I use that word because I feel like, I'm following you behind. Like, we've actually met before, and you're just telling me exactly, because I did the same thing, but a duplex, we renovated it. But, before we get to the partnership, which I can't wait to get to, and the flipping, right? There's so much good stuff. I love it.
I'm trying to project a very positive image, though. So we gotta,
absolutely.
make sure.
Oh, absolutely.
We
Absolutely.
all have to be willing to talk about the things that don't go well. I think too often everyone tries to come across as a perfect investor, or here's how you do it, and here's how sometimes things don't go well, right? And I think the key is to learn from those mistakes and change your processes and adjust those processes so you don't replicate those challenges. So.
And I think the challenge is really, as real estate investors, but also more importantly, as human beings, we have to make sure that we're telling people the reality, right? There's no need to either sugarcoat something or just be like downright negative. I think
Yep.
just really finding that sweet spot and saying, look, this is how it is because this is how it is. So when you do get in and jump in, don't be like, oh my God, I didn't know, so it's best to just say how it is, and then
Yep.
get people to make their own deduce their own, I guess, opinion
Yep.
after that. So I really, really want us to go tactical, right? So you got the duplex, you said you had it value, and then you refied, right? So can you just, for, somebody, a Dwellynn listener listening to this, can you just tell us what actually that means?
Yeah. So we used the FHA loan. So with the FHA loan, we were able to put down 3.5% of the down payment. So we bought it for $362,500. And we had some credit. So basically, the way we negotiated things, where let's just say the HVAC system, it was about 20 years old. We felt that it was on its last leg. It was working when we bought it, but we just knew it was something we were going to have to replace in the immediate future. We negotiated credit. So when we had it serviced and then we negotiated credit, there was something else where we negotiated credit. So in short, we only came to the table with $7,500. And the rest of the money that we should have been coming to the table with, we got as a credit. So we bought this place, a $360,000 two-unit building, with only about $7,000 or $8,000 out of our own pocket, right? So I think for the first thing I'd like to say is for those people who think, oh, well, I can't start because I don't have enough money, which is the way I was looking at it. I had no idea I could do this until we had saved up more money and we were going into it. I'm like, wait, you're telling me all I needed was $7,000 to buy this $360,000 property? So that was a great, eye opener. But we invested about $50,000 into renovations. And we did use our own cash. We didn't finance that part because we had saved up all this money anticipating the need to have it. So we updated the kitchen, we updated the bathroom, they had these really old heating systems. We took all that out, put in central heat, central air, updated the yard, the side yard, the exterior. And in short, we created a lot of value. The neighborhood we invested in was one of the better neighborhoods in Chicago. And in fact, it was the only neighborhood that did not see a decline in value from 2007 through 2011. So for us, that was a fine indicator that this was a pretty good neighborhood to invest in, and we would be fine with our values over the long haul. When we refinanced, what we did was we went to the bank. They took a look at it. They had an appraiser come out, and they appraised it at a much higher value. I think it was like $550,000 or something like that. And because of that, they gave us a couple of options. We could either pull out that equity or they could give us a line of credit. We opted for the line of credit so we'd have the ability to do more if we wanted to flip properties, use that for renovations, pay it off once we sold it. So that gave us some flexibility. But that really, opened up the doors to us where it got us, when we refinanced, we also got out of the FHA loan. So that enabled us to either use another FHA loan, but we no longer had to pay the PMI. So we actually lowered that monthly payment. So now we're cash flowing better on this first property. We've got a $100,000 line of credit to use on other investment properties. And again, you go back to the initial investment with the $7K out of pocket initially, about $50K that we put into it, and we were able to pull out all of our money or all of our initial investment and plus that, and still live in a property and still manage it. So,
Oh my goodness. This sounds like a perfect deal. Congratulations. This is like, I feel like almost dancing. It's so good, isn't it? Right? Like if you really pay attention to the story, like you went in with 7.5K, you put in 50, you came out with a line of credit, you lowered your monthly payment, meaning you increase your cash flow. I mean, this is just beautiful. So congratulations on that.
yeah, thank you.
And then, so you said you bought a 8-unit, right? Or did you go flipping after?
We bought a 3-unit, then we bought an 8-unit, then we bought, a couple flip projects, and yeah.
Okay, so fantastic. So you basically went on, you kept with your real estate activities. So now let's go into, you get to this point where, okay, I need to get more cash, right? So you started thinking, okay, well, let's flip. How did you guys make that decision, and how easy was it for you guys going from a buy and hold type strategy to actively flipping?
Yeah, great question. So, I mean, I've been preparing myself for various real estate investing strategies for a long time, right? I think flipping is something that most investors at least get basic level of education on, right? Because it's the sexy thing, right? You turn on HGTV, you see them flipping houses, right? It's the thing that people write books about, and it's the quick, shiny object that people get excited about. You go on, Instagram, you see the before and after pictures, right? Look at this house, look what I did to it. Like that's the cool, sexy thing that gets people excited. So I still didn't like it because from a business standpoint, it felt risky to me. And all the research I've done, we had the different equations. You want to buy it at 70 cents on a dollar. You want to make sure that, all of your costs are no more than that. So we had all these formulas and things like that. But ultimately what I decided to do was, instead of trying to now switch from focusing on multifamily to focusing on being a flipper, I wanted to partner with somebody who could bring that expertise to the table, somebody who had a track record flipping homes, somebody who could pretty much do that side. I would be more of the money investor, but it would allow me to increase, or turn that money much quicker, right? So if I put $50,000 into this, if I can now turn that 50 into $100,000, now I have $100,000 to go buy another multifamily property. So that was my approach going into it. We found an investor, or a contractor, or project manager, who was flipping these homes. And I met a young man who had less experience than me, but he was flipping homes. And I asked him how he was doing it. He introduced me to his partner. I met with him a couple of times. I saw the program that he had set up and kind of the systems that he had set up. And he was pretty much doing these cookie cutter houses where he was buying them, ripping off the top. He was buying these bungalows, ripping off the top, doing a full second story addition, and then selling them at pretty much the top of the market in those neighborhoods. So I had some concerns with the business model. He addressed them to the best that he could. But overall, I spoke to everybody else who was doing it. It all seemed to be working well. And we decided to move forward and partner with him on that.
Fantastic. Partner with him.
Yes.
From everything you know about partnerships, would you typically partner with folks? And if you will, what are the pluses and what are the negatives?
Absolutely. I would absolutely partner with people. And I'll tell you, that partnership went sour, and it was an absolute awful partnership, quite frankly. But I learned a lot about the process. And when you're trying to partner with them, how you actually screen people, right? So I'll tell you a quick story of that partnership. In short, he had a good system, but there were things that didn't go well. And what I would tell anybody is, never lose your own confidence and trust your training, trust your processes. So while I had never flipped a house, I had read quite a few books, and I had listened to quite a few people who are very successful in flipping houses give me the keys to success in flipping. We just talked about that 70% rule when it comes to flipping. Well, this guy wasn't doing any of that, right? So he wasn't doing a 70% rule. So I was looking at it saying, hey, I think we're paying too much for this property, and I think our ARV is too high. ARV is after repair value. And the rehab costs seem really small. So all three of those important numbers were off in my project when I looked at it, right? And he's, no, I got it. This is what it's going to be, and blah, blah, blah. And he had a system. And I saw, and I talked to everyone else, and they're like, nope, 140 is what it is. That's how much it costs, and that's how he's been doing it. And we brought other contractors through, not just us, but all the other JV partners. And they all said the same thing about, I have no idea how this guy's getting at that price. Now, at that time, I said, wow, that's amazing. That means this guy's getting rock bottom pricing, and he's able to create some real great value. What should have happened was a red flag to say, there's something off with this formula. If no other contractor can even fathom how this guy is doing it at this work, is this a house of cards? Is something wrong here? And that's what ultimately happened, right? So I think the first thing is trust your gut. Do your own research. Never just blindly give your money to somebody and say, oh, you know what you're doing? Great. Ask questions. Get comfortable. And if you don't like the answers to the questions, that's the time to either ask more questions or step aside and wait. But, you want to make sure anybody you partner with, they not only know what they're doing, but they have the ability to trust and respect you and your intellect, right? Again, this is a situation where it's a partnership, and that partnership goes two ways. And even if you're just a money investor, you've never flipped a property, or you've never invested in multifamily, and we do a lot of multifamily partnerships now. When people ask me questions, I treat those questions very seriously, because that's a question that is serious to that person. There's a reason that they're asking, and it may be something, I got a question on an apartment deal recently where someone asked if I was concerned about the lower immigration birth rate in the state of Texas. Now, on the surface, that question may not seem very important to an apartment building investment. You're like, well, do you see the returns? Do you see the projected growth? Do you see the job growth? And so the immigration question on surface may not seem that important, but this was a very important question for this person. And it was very important for me. And I didn't have that answer right away. So I took a moment. I did a bunch of research within about 90 minutes on immigration, birth in the state of Texas, what was going on, if there were any proposed tax or any proposed legislature that may change it, and got back to him with the answer in the best way that we could as far as how it may impact the investment. And I think that's the key, right? You don't want to partner with somebody who's going to brush you off and just say, oh, don't worry about that. And if someone tells you don't worry about that, you should worry about that. You should absolutely worry. Even if it's insignificant, they should be able to tell you why you shouldn't worry about it, right? They should be able to tell you, hey, well, based on this, this, and this, that factor we don't think is going to have much impact on the overall investment. But don't tell me don't worry about that. And I think that's the key. It's just more so the relationship. Get to know the person. Make sure you feel comfortable with that individual first and foremost. No, I don't care how great you are as an investor. I want to make sure you're somebody I want to work with and want to be talking to a year from now or 2 years from now or 5 years from now. Are you somebody I want to build a relationship with? And if not, you probably don't want to partner with that person.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for that. Thank you so much for that. So after the flip, you're still doing a couple of flips and you kind of went really huge on apartment buildings. So can you pick one of the apartment building deals that you did that you really liked? To just tell us, like, how did you guys find it? How did you fund it? Unit size, numbers, any value add play?
Yeah, so I mean, the current one we're doing right now is a 28-unit building in Cincinnati. It's actually in this little small suburb within the city called Norwood. And basically, this was a deal that, one, brokers lie. Let me start with that. So brokers are salesmen. I want you to just, I want you to pause this and play it back. Just never take anything a broker said, or everything, I should say, at face value. Most of them are very honest guys, and they will tell you, but they're salesmen. So whatever they tell you, just have to trust them and verify, right? Just verify the information, go back. So this was a deal that was brought to a handful of investors off market. I got an email saying, hey, you reached out to me, last year about this property that was available that was already under contract. Here's another opportunity that we think is going to go very quickly. We're going to put it on, to the open market next week if we don't get under contract this week. I looked at it, looked at the numbers. I knew the location because I had been focused on this location for quite some time. And it was an area that we thought had some great growth potential and is already seeing a little bit of growth. So we moved pretty aggressively and got some numbers together. I sent somebody who was local in Cincinnati to go check out the property just to confirm everything is working. And asked the broker about the condition of the property, gave me some information. We put in an offer. We got that offer accepted. And at that point, the due diligence period really started. But this deal was really interesting because when I asked why the seller was selling, the answer I got was, oh, well, he's just looking to do a 1031 exchange. He's selling a lot of his stuff in Cincinnati, and he's looking to invest more in Florida. I'm like, okay, cool. But as you peel back the onion, one of the things that came up was the furnace had gone out in January. So a month earlier, the furnace had gone out. And this was a pretty sizable ticket item. It's cost them about $40,000 between replacing that, between putting up all the tenants. And, this is January, early January in Cincinnati. It was cold as hell. So he had to put all these residents up into a hotel or whatever. So he had to pay for all of that. But the city actually started getting in on them. So the inspector, the health inspector, the police department, all these people now are inspecting his building. It was a news story. And again, the broker didn't disclose this. He told me that he replaced the furnace and it went out, but I didn't understand that the city was like investigating and this was they were hot on him. They were trying to close the building down actually. So when you discover all these things, we're doing our inspection and, we started talking to all the city officials. We really started learning what was going on with the property and what was needed on our end to invest in that property to make this thing run the proper way. We were fortunate enough that a city official lives 4 doors down from the property and happened to be the person when I called. He was the guy who answered and he told me, today is your lucky day. And he gave me the history. He ran it down and he told me everything I needed to know about the property. And that was very helpful for us in understanding what we were getting ourselves into and what our plan needed to be and adjusting some of our projections. So that's a play that we're really excited about because there's a Class A office building going up 500 yards away. I mean, typically in Class C neighborhoods, you don't see new development. You don't see new construction, yet alone Class A development. So for us, this stood out as something that was really interesting where the neighborhoods just adjacent to it are Class A and Class B neighborhoods. So you have a lot of people who are now being priced out of those neighborhoods who are now looking to come over here. It's right off of the freeway. So location is something that we really focus a lot of our energy on. Obviously, I've got the podcast, Target Market Insights, and that's the big thing that I focus on is the location, because I think that's the one thing you can't change. I can make a building, I can invest as much money as I want to make a building look great. But if it's in a rough neighborhood, it doesn't matter. The value is only going to go up so much. So finding that location is really what we spend a lot of our time and energy focused on. And then once we know we have a great location, we try to be a little bit more aggressive to get the property and do the updates that we need to add the value. So we're going to be investing about $200,000 on this property, about $4,000 or $5,000 per unit, doing some exterior renovations. And we think that we're going to create a pretty good value and deliver some strong returns to our partners.
Definitely keep us up to date on that deal. I'll be
Yeah.
very interested to see what happens there. So before we go into the quick round, if I'm a young, you know, investor wannabe, right? And I'm listening to this conversation, I'm like, oh my goodness, this sounds pretty cool. I really want to do this, right? I want to be this guys or this guy when I grow up, but I don't have enough money, right? I know we've touched on this, earlier on, but what do a young investor needs to do to really get immersed and to really get started in this investing game?
Well, I mean, I think you have to figure out what your skill set is, right? What do you like and what are you good at? And if you don't have the money, how can you help another investor? So that's one way to look at it. Another thing is start saving. What are you doing right now? Like, again, I told you I got my first duplex from basically invested 7,000. Now that was a $360,000 duplex, right? Depending on what market you're in, maybe you get $100,000 property at 3.5%. That's only $3,500. Now you can take a look. I don't care how much money you make. You can take a look at your expenses and over the course of a year, find a way to save $3,500. I think you can do that, right? Now, and if you can't do that, you can get, I mean, I'm not the guy to say put stuff on credit cards and all that, but I do think that if you're investing in a duplex or you're going to own or occupy it, you can be a little more aggressive in that situation where you're going to be paying that money out anyway. You're going to pay it on the rent, right? So the alternative is you're going to pay $600, $700, $1,000 in monthly rent. Or would you like to pay a mortgage company, own it, get a little bit of residual income from that asset? And now you're starting to build some equity and kind of starting to build these income streams. So I would start with your own personal residence, right? Figure out your living situation, figure out your expenses, and figure out how to save more of that income. Outside of the money, I think you just need to start surrounding yourself with people. Surround yourself with people who are actively investing in real estate because it's easy for that spirit to die out. I know I meet a lot of people who want to invest in real estate or interested in investing in real estate who are even passionate about it. But you talk to them a year later, 2 years later, 3 years later, they still haven't bought anything. And the reason is because they're not surrounding themselves with people who keep them motivated. You know, you and I, we've talked about it. We know people who are doing big things. And, as I talk about a 28 unit, to me, in my mind, it's a smaller deal, right? But if you were to talk to me 3-4 years ago, huge deal, right? And it's when you buy a 192 unit building, like the numbers don't scare you. And I think that's the important thing is the more comfortable you get, the easier it's going to be. And you might have to start with one. You might have to start with a 2 unit. You might have to start with a $50,000 property or a $30,000 property. Whatever it is, get started. Figure out how to get started and do something. Add value. Just be a part of a deal. Start looking for deals with somebody. Again, I mean, right now, all the investors I know are looking for deals. And that's something that won't cost you very much money. You just take your time and invest that time into helping to screen potential deals for an investor and then getting compensated for that. So if you're interested in getting started, make sure you're passionate about it and surround yourself with the right people and start figuring out what those steps are you need to take.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for that. So we're definitely dwelling into the quick round. These are going to be quick questions, quick answers. You ready, sir?
Let's do it.
First question. What makes John unique? So what is that differentiating factor that separates you from the next guy or the next girl?
Oh man, I mean, I try to be as authentic as I can be. That's something I don't know if we get that all the time from everybody, but I try to be authentic. I try to be as open as I can be and available. I'm learning to say no. That's a new thing. You got to learn to say no sometimes. But I think ultimately, my background is in marketing. I'm a very passionate person. So I think just taking that, combining that, my skill set, my background, and working with others. And, like I said, I'm a Midwest kid, so I'm a combination of humble, but nothing was given to me and nothing was easy. So I have no problems going out there and working hard and grinding out to make it happen.
Nice. Second question. What was the last book that you read? And what was the one thing that you learned from that book?
Burn Zones by George Newberry. It's a great book. George actually was a speaker at the Best Ever conference that I went to, and he's going to be at the Midwest Summit that I'm a part of and launching. And George, he's got a phenomenal story. In short, he was an entrepreneur as a child, and he was a real estate investor. He lost $26 million. And the book just talks about those moments where you want to give up and how he overcame it. It's an amazing book, and it reinforces that as you go through your real estate investing career or whatever your life trials and tribulations are. One, things can be bad, and no matter how bad they get, you can overcome it. So that's the big takeaway.
Love it. So you've got, your multifamily buildings, this, the huge deals you're doing. You've got, the summit you just mentioned. You've got your podcast, of course. You've got the family, your beautiful kids and your wife.
Thank you.
You've got all this stuff going on. What do you do for fun?
Man, fun is on short supply right now, so we got a lot of stuff going on. But for fun, I try to hang with the family, hang with the kids, see my friends when we can. Right now, it's a tight time period right now because we are doing a lot. But part of what we're trying to do is create a little bit more time for fun. But I love playing sports. I tore up my ankle not that long ago, so I'm still in recovery mode from that. But reading a little bit, hanging out, traveling for sure. I mean, you're the travel king, so trying to get on your level with the travel game.
I know.
So, yeah, but traveling for sure. I mean, that's something where we got a couple trips planned this year. So I think once we close this deal, once we get the conference done, I'm going to take a week-long vacation to just relax.
Well deserved. So if I'm a Dwell listener and I'm like, oh my goodness, I love John. Like, I love everything he's saying. And I'm in Chicago, right? And, how can I connect with you? How can people reach out to you? How can people get more of your content? Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, I mean, multiple ways. So I have my podcast, Target Market Insights. You can go to targetmarketinsights.com and check out the website and check out all the podcast episodes there. You can reach me on Instagram. My handle's @jcasmon, same handle for Twitter. And then I'm on Facebook. I don't use Facebook as much, but I do for the Target Market Insights page. But you can check me there. There aren't that many John Casmons, but there is another. He is my father, so he may not give you the same kind of information that you're looking for. but yeah, you can check me out any one of those places.
Awesome. Thank you so much, John. I had a great time, learned a ton myself. So thank you so much. I really appreciate your time today.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me on.